what we're going to look at in this second section is the various components, factors in our life that influence how we select, organize, interpret, and negotiate our perception. So let's take a look. All right, so they're influenced by many things. We're going to look at the big five: access to information, physiological influences, psychological influences, social influences, and cultural influences. So if you think about the video that I asked you to watch, All That We Share, I have to tell you that every time I watch that video, I'm very moved by it. So I'm glad that I didn't show it in the classroom, because it usually makes me cry. And I'm thinking about a comment that I made on, I think it was Dawn's post, where she talked about her son playing with a child who was very different from him, and they didn't even speak the same language, and yet they were able to interact. And I said, I wonder, and then she said, it's if we focus more on what's similar than dissimilar. And I said, I've been thinking about this idea a lot, and I wonder if maybe instead of focusing on the similarities, we should celebrate the differences. And then I watch again All That We Share, and I think, okay, maybe I'm way off base on this. So if you think about that video, I'm pretty sure that when people walked in, they had a tendency to perceive people as being different from them because they looked different, they dressed differently, they held themselves differently. But as they started to ask people to break out of, there was a box of like nurses, and then there looked like there was a box of construction workers, because there were some guys with incredibly beefy arms. And they were younger people and older people, and they would say, okay, everyone who was a class clown, come into this box. So basically what they're doing is they're seeing what similarities they have, and they're having access to new information. So this is something that can change our perception. And I'm off on the wrong slide. Do you remember as a child, were you ever at a store and you saw your elementary school teacher and you were shocked that this person actually had a life outside of school, because you assumed that when you left the classroom, they somehow just hung up the teacher in the closet, because for you that was the only role that person had, was teacher. And then you saw them in the grocery store, and it was both thrilling and shocking. Okay, so as we get access to information, that we realize, wow, this person that I know in the classroom is being a real bear. I've seen them, in the park interacting with their kids, and they're a real nice person. Maybe I need to change my perception of them. Sometimes there's also an overlap of roles, where you go with a friend and you visit their family, and you know this person as friend, but you see them both as, in this situation, both as friend, but also as they say, the spoiled son, the princess daughter, the person who always takes control. And you say, I have more information, and now I'm going to change my perception. And also, obviously, social media can influence someone's perception of another person, which is why they say, if you're looking for a job, definitely go in and clean up your social media. Get rid of the pictures of you doing stupid things, or something that you posted saying where you're, out fishing, and you posted, I called in sick today, haha, whatever it is. So, and you guys, as I keep saying, know much more about social media than I do. So the first one was access to information, but beyond that, we have physiological influences. We're going to see the term physiology or physiological a couple of times when we talk about emotions, when we talk about listening. And so what's important to understand about physiology is it has to do with physical, with the body. So within this, there are many things that can influence how we perceive the world. How many of you have ever said to, well, okay, this sounds like a real mom thing to do, where I'll say, put a sweater on, it's cold in here. Put a sweater on, I'm cold, right? Or turn that music down, it's so loud, it's giving me a headache. So we just assume at some level that people are experiencing the world the same way we are through our senses. Another way that life changes is as, or our perception changes, is as we age. So if you think about how you saw the world when you were 5 and how you see it now, you probably notice that it's not even that you think of things differently, you notice different things. You're selecting different things. Things that you've selected, the things that you're paying attention to, you assign different meaning to. And I love the Mark Twain quote. When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years. Okay, so obviously, who really learned? Yeah, okay. It was Mark Twain himself who learned. Health and fatigue. When you are tired, the world is a mean place. When you are not feeling well, the world is a mean place. I know that when I'm either tired or just not feeling good, I notice how many bad drivers there are on the road. And I don't think, bad drivers are not correlated to how healthy or sick I am. It's our perception. There's also biological cycles. My family hates me because I am a morning person. I get up, I know I hit the ground and I am going and I'm ready to do things, and my family takes longer to wake up. So I'm still learning this. I need not to ask any difficult things until people have had a chance to wake up. And they know that they cannot ask me to do anything that demands brain power if it's past 9 o'clock. Once the sun goes down, I'm pretty much done. Another one is hunger. And if you go into the interesting links for chapter 4, I have the links to those Snicker commercials that they're encouraging people. When you're hungry, you're not yourself. We perceive the world differently when we're hungry. I think the world is a meaner place there too. There are also neurobehavioral challenges, and the book talks specifically about ADHD and also about, what was the other one? Bipolar, was it? That people who are ADHD, or I think we just call it ADD now, it's not that they can't they are unable to filter out, so they're selecting everything, which makes organization a lot harder. So if you're interacting with someone with any kind of a neurobehavioral challenge, you should take that into account before you jump to conclusions or make judgments. Okay. There are psychological influences. So again, how we select, organize, interpret, and negotiate data is also influenced by our mood. Okay, so I like this experiment. They had a picture of children who were digging in a swampy area, and there was someone who was in a happy mood who said, "Looks like fun, reminds me of summer. That's what life is for, working out in the open, really living, digging the dirt, planting, watching things grow." Someone who was anxious said, "They're going to get hurt." Right? Someone who was critical said, "Oh, it's horrible. There should be useful things for these kids to do." So these people all saw the same picture, but their mood influenced how they selected, but definitely how they interpreted the data. So if you realize that when you are in a bad mood, you are not making good judgment calls because everything's so negative, or if you're in a really good mood, you're not making good judgment calls, you probably want to say to yourself or the person you're talking to, this is a really important topic and I'd like to discuss it with you, but I can't right now, so let's do this tomorrow, because you need to take control of of your own reactions to moods. Another one is self-concept, which we talked about at the beginning of the semester. So there's a study that showed that perceiving oneself as funny is related to perceiving others as funny. If you don't think anyone's funny, you probably don't think you are either. If you think people are funny, then you're willing to see yourself as funny. If you're kind of even with your self concept and someone's teasing you, you might see it as friendly teasing. But if you're feeling very unsure, the teasing will seem hostile. And the third one was children who had a low opinion of themselves are more likely to see themselves as victims of bullying. Isn't that interesting? There's a video that we're going to look at in chapter 8 where, can't think of his name, Mr. Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman, says that a lot of people who are bullies are misreading they're misreading the situation because they don't feel good about themselves. They see themselves as being teased. So, interesting. Okay, the last two, social influences. So, the last two are very closely connected because we're going to look at the society and culture. So within every society, there are various things that influence us. And sociologists have come up with or social scientists have developed standpoint theory, which says a person's position in society shapes his or her view of society in general and of specific individuals. So this is very much what Nelson Mandela said, where you stand depends on where you sit. So, and I think we will probably, frequently we do, but especially right now we're seeing it played out in our larger society where people are saying, look, my standing in society, how I live, where I live, what social class I'm in, that has influenced how I see the world. And so other people are saying, I don't get it because where they stand is different. So it's like where you stand is influencing your viewpoint. Okay. So here's a good quote, unless one has been disadvantaged, it can be difficult to imagine how the world might look to someone who has been treated badly because of race, ethnicity, gender, biological sex, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic class. Okay, so let's look at these. A lot of times we use the words sex and gender interchangeably, but sex has to do with biology, and gender has to do with the social and psychological dimensions of feminine and masculine behavior, which has to do with what our society says is acceptable for men and women to do. So you might not think about this very much, that how it influences your perception, but Nicole wrote about this in a journal. Being raised with a lot of boys, I think, gave her an advantage to see the world from a less feminine standpoint, even though grandma was saying this is not how girls act, this is not how boys act. I was just talking to my sisters, and we were talking about when we were little, or younger, some of us are still little, the girls in the family had to wash dishes. We didn't have a dishwasher until, I don't know, at some point when I was growing up. That was considered a feminine job, and the boys had to take out the trash. Okay, hopefully, that's probably not still going on, but there were very specific gender roles. Okay, another thing to look at is an occupational role. Like, we see the world based on the job that we have. So I like this. You have a bunch of people walking through the park, and they're looking around. 5 people walking through the park. One is a botanist, and what he sees as all the trees and plants. The zoologist, she sees interesting animals. The meteorologist is looking at the weather. The psychologist doesn't see any of this, but sees the people and how they're interacting. And the 5th person is a pickpocket who notices that no one is paying attention, and so he's going along stealing everybody's wallet. Okay, this is very true that we see the world many of us see the world through the lens of our job. The book references something that you might be familiar with. Philip Zimbardo did an experiment in the 70s where he had his college students. They were all male. They were all well-educated and middle class. And he divided them into, some of you are the prison guards and others of you are the prisoners. And this experiment was supposed to go on for several weeks, and he had to cut it short because it was supposed to go on for 2 weeks, but before it even got to a week, Zimbardo stopped the experiment because he realized that the people who were prison guards were becoming quite vicious. And there really wasn't a big distinction between these people until they took on different occupational roles. All right, the last one under social influence is relational roles. And for those of you who have children, you probably felt a very big shift in you from being just, you thought of yourself as a regular person, and all of a sudden you're a mom or you're a dad. And that changes how you see the world. I know that once we had kids, I suddenly noticed all the electrical outlets we had. I didn't perceive that before. Possibly I had new respect for my parents and what they went through. I mean, I struggled with 2 children and they had 8. That is amazing. Also think about if you've ever dissolved a relationship, a romantic relationship. You look at that person once you've taken the love goggles off and you think, what did I see in them? When they were the beloved, even those things you didn't care for, you overlooked them. And once they were no longer beloved, they were the scum of the earth. Okay. The last one we're going to look at is cultural influences. I really don't know why the textbook authors decided to put Sherlock Holmes here. I mean, it's definitely, if you have seen the TV show Sherlock, it's very interesting. He is incredibly perceptive. I wouldn't say it has anything to do with cultural influences. So one of the things that we will talk about a lot more in chapter 5 is how different cultures perceive talk. The United States values talk. Generally, we tend to see that the person who is talking has power. But many, probably not all, but many Asian cultures value silence, value listening. And so imagine you've got someone from the United States and someone from China who are doing business together, who are classmates. And what they're seeing is the person from China is thinking, this American is rude because they talk so much. They're being really childish. And the American is looking at the person from China and saying, why doesn't this person have an opinion? Why aren't they talking? Are they mad at me? So definitely, that talk is not the only cultural influence on perception. The book gives a nice description of people from Laos, the Hmong, who have a very different view of what a medical, someone who is taking care of their physical body should do. So we will talk more when we get into the next chapter, the end of this section. We're going to talk about empathy and how easy it is to take on the perspective of somebody else. And this is definitely culturally influenced. So what I want you to do is to figure out how good your understanding is. Can you think of any of the 5 factors that influence our perception and give an example? If you can't, I suggest you go back, listen to the lecture, check in the book. And when you're going through this, if there's anything that you didn't understand or anything you want to know more about, this is a great time for you to send me a chapter question. So that is the end of the second section, and we will resume in a little while.